Pixel Perfect, a Danganronpa fanfiction by Kessie-Louise. Chapter 1. The remnants of despair had done it. They were able to stop the Hope video from completely brainwashing the world. For once, all Makoto Naegi had to do was watch. Smiling to himself, Makoto left the broadcasting tower with the assurance that the future was going to be bright and full of hope for the previous despairs. He almost didn't notice when they started to come out of the tower. One by one, now joined together with friendship and forgiveness, it was Hajime that caught Makoto's eye. The two gave each other nods of acknowledgement, the ultimate hope for their respective peers. That is, until Hajime slipped something into Makoto's hand. He wasn't able to look at it right away. That only happened once the 77B class was well on their way again and the world was in a quiet peace once more. Makoto found that it was a piece of paper in its hand. On it were some numbers that took Makoto a solid minute to figure out. When he did, he found himself just as dumbfounded. Coordinates? Makoto didn't know much about planes and how they worked. He couldn't even tell right away if they were even going in the right direction. If he didn't have Byakuya in his ear, he might have been a touch nervous. Just because you're on the Future Foundation's good side now, it doesn't mean you should be undertaking unlisted missions just because you can. I know, Makoto admitted. I am still on a short leash too, I get it. But this is something I need to do. I can feel it. Byakuya gave an exasperated sigh. Just get it done. Makoto smiled. The plane landed not far from the coordinates. Makoto had to make the rest of the trek on foot. It wasn't that hard of a hike. If anything, this area looked pretty well maintained up until a year or so ago. Some ivy was growing in the path. The trees were a little bushy but otherwise healthy. It reminded Makoto of a nature trail. Where it ended surprised him, though. Nature trails usually didn't back into a large bunker. The bunker was guarded by a single keypad lock. It was far too simple. Makoto checked the paper Hajime had given him. Carefully, Makoto approached the bunker and entered the keypad number. A slow hydraulic hiss greeted him. The door to the bunker started to roll open, allowing light to peer into the structure for the first time in a while. Makoto took cautious steps forward. As he entered, motion sensor lights flickered to life. He followed them as they came on. The lights led him to a large open room. Placed in the center was a glass container filled with a dark blue liquid. Makoto moved closer. It became clear to him that the glass container contained something within. He had to get pretty close to realize that it was something humanoid. Makoto all but pressed his face to the glass in trying to understand what was going on here. When he recognized the face, he leapt back in shock. No way. He went back over to the glass container and looked over the body once more. The shock of it all outweighed the shame that the poor young woman was naked. But it was her. It had to be. Slowly, Makoto pulled out his phone and put it to his ear. Hey, Byakuya? No, I'm not in trouble again. No, not that either. I think I found something that also needs to be relocated to Jabberwock Island. At first, in hearing the helicopter come, former Class 77B thought they were in trouble again. They sent out Hajime as a peacekeeper, and also because he lost a game of rock, paper, scissors. Hajime patiently waited for the helicopter to land and cut off its engine. To his honor, the great Byakuya Togami stepped out. The former ultimate high school level progeny looked around his surroundings with a measure of disgust. His eyes fell to Hajime and seemed to grow darker. Of course they sent you, Byakuya spat. Hajime raised an eyebrow. Is there something wrong with that? He spoke, the tone of which not quite his. Byakuya grunted. I have a mission for the former ultimate high school level nurse and former ultimate high school level coach, he said. A mission intended for only their eyes at the moment. Do you understand, Izuru Kamakura? Something in Hajime changed. His stance was a bit wider and his eyes flickered with both recognition and hatred. Don't call me that, he told Byakuya. Despite this, he turned and went back to his peers. They lingered just outside the airfield in hopes of spying on what was going on. What's going on, Hajime? Hibuki quickly asked first. Are they going to let us stay or not? He wants Mikon and Nekomaru. The news took the peers aback. Why? Ryota wondered. Hajime could only shake his head. Don't know. Mikan and Nekomaru took a look at each other. Then, unanimously, they gave each other a nod and entered the airfield. Byakuya did not look happy that he had to wait. Finally, he huffed once they were close enough. Whatever you two are about to see, and whatever reaction you might have, you must know that it must be done as quiet as possible. Do you understand? We're always quiet, Nekomaru thundered. Byakuya did not look amused. Uh-huh, he murmured, but otherwise kept to himself. Byakuya then gave a snap of his fingers directed at the helicopter. On cue, 2 medical staff came out with a stretcher between them. There was a body on the stretcher, covered from head to toe with a foil blanket covering them. The stretcher was gently placed on the ground, and the medical staff then went back to the helicopter. Mikan and Nekomaru exchanged a glance. They walked closer to the stretcher and noticed that the head was actually uncovered. As they got closer, the two found a familiar face smiling back at them. Chiaki! The smile was pained, but it was her. Hey, came the croaking reply. Talking hurts, but don't! Mikan immediately squeaked. We need to get you to the hospital immediately! Without letting the whole island know, Byakuya reminded them. We can't just give out false hope at a time like this. You two must understand this. Right, Mikan and Nekomaru nodded in unison. The two then looked to each other. I'll get everyone away from the airfield, Nekomaru told Mikan. You just get Chiaki to the hospital nice and safe, alright? Mikan nodded, certain of her mission. Byakuya took a look at the airfield entrance. Their piers were so tightly packed that you would have assumed they were an elite force sent to protect someone. In some ways, they likely were in a past life. Without so much a trace of irony, Byakuya told him, Good luck. Chapter 2. Nekomaru's distraction was only enough to get everyone away from the airfield. After that, a lot of speculation started to surface. Hey Nekomaru, Akane mused once they were back on the main island. Yes, we are still training this afternoon, Nekomaru replied without a second guess. No, not that. Akane disagreed with a shake of her head and a look of disgust. It quickly went away in favor of puppy eyes. Where did Mikan go? She's likely at the hospital as we speak, Nekomaru automatically said. Why would she be at the hospital? Mahiro questioned. None of us are sick. Nekomaru flinched. Well, he stammered. That's easy. We have a visitor that needs Mikan exclusively. Yeah! And who would trust the remnants of despair with their lives anymore? Hiyoko snorted. She has a point, the ultimate imposter agreed. Nekomaru was sweating bullets now at this point. Shit, he suddenly declared. I need a shit! And with that he ran as fast as he could to the first island ferry, leaving his peers behind. That was helpful, Fuyuhiko sniffed, folding his arms in annoyance. No, but we have a clue, Mahiro pointed out. The hospital. The hospital, everyone agreed in unison. It didn't take much to know where they planned on going next. The hell you mean the hospital is closed? Mikan flinched from Fuyuhiko's harsh words. Well, you see, she tried to sputter out. We have a visitor and... Bullshit! Fuyuhiko continued to shout. We know you're hiding something in that hospital, asshole. Mikan let out a squeak of self-defense, however meek it was. It was not enough to calm down Fuyuhiko's ire. Just tell us the truth, damn it, he told her. That's all we want. I can't. Not yet, Mikan told everyone. Well, that's just great, Fuyuhiko huffed, throwing his arms up in the air. Anyone else want to wear her down? No one took him up on the offer. Instead, they all looked to each other and wondering just how much effort they were going to put into the subject. Sonia, in particular, had her gaze fall upon Hajime. There was something in his face that she couldn't quite recognize, something that might have bordered on badly holding back the truth. Hajime knows, she said out loud, surprising everyone. Don't you? With all eyes on him, Hajime simply looked to the ground. So that's it, Kazuichi decided. We're just going to stay in the dark about this? For a week, Mikan supplied. Give or take, but that was what we promised. Promised who? Peko inquired. The Future Foundation, Mikan replied, and her. A week could not pass by quick enough for former Class 77B. The curiosity burned a hole into their minds and just would not let them go. It made it even more baffling to know that Nekomaru had suspended his afternoon training with Akane to also visit the hospital. Two of their own were involved with this visitor, and both refused to give any secrets as to who it was and why they wanted to help from the remnants of despair. When Mikan finally opened the hospital again, her peers all but flooded the lobby. So just where is this mysterious visitor? Gundam asked first. These halls are suspiciously unchanged. In one of the rooms proper still, Mikan told him. But please, when you see them, try not to squish them, okay? Squish them? Sonia repeated with a curious tilt of her head. Mikan nodded. You'll understand soon. With an anxious gesture to the hallway, Mikan beckoned her peers to follow her. They all followed in a single file line with their own sense of anxiety and excitement. They were finally going to meet their visitor. Who were they? Mikan entered one of the hospital rooms and did not wait for anyone to follow her. Instead, she went to the bedside. Everyone crowded in the room as she helped the someone laying on the bed into an upright position. It took all of a second for everyone to shout the same name. Chiaki! All bets were off as the group stampeded their way to the bedside. 1,000,001 questions were directed at Chiaki. She smiled through it all, but didn't answer any until everyone had calmed down a bit. The only one who gave her any sense of space was Hajime, who was still lingering near the door. How? Mahiro wondered once most of the other questions had died down. Determination, Chiaki playfully said, winching as she held her arms up to hold a superhero pose. She immediately put them back down again. They flopped at her side like dead weights. It still took a lot of effort to move this early on. It was Mikan who gave the real answer. She was kept in suspended animation by Izuru Kamakura. Everyone looked at Hajime. Is it true? Nagito asked. There was a flicker of adoration in his eyes at the idea. Hajime pretended not to notice. It was easy for someone with the abilities of the ultimate chemist, ultimate nurse, and a few others, Izuru informed them. Surely some luck as well, Mikan nodded. Her upper body seems to show signs of atrophy, but her vitals are all regular, Mikan added. It really is a miracle. But, Kazuichi asked, sensing that Mikan was holding back some information, there has to be a but in this situation. Mikan nodded, a nervous, regretful nod. Her spinal cord, it's badly damaged at certain nerves. It may look like, it really is, possible that Chiaki can never walk again. The news hit them like a freight train. Mahiro was the one to ask, so Chiaki is paralyzed? From the hips down, yes, Mikan affirmed. It's alright, Chiaki herself told everyone. I was never good at dancing games anyway. This has nothing to do with the games you can't play, Hiyoko immediately reprimanded. Yeah, your whole way of life is going to change, Fubuki agreed with her own gusto. It's not going to be easy, Fuyuhiko added. He pointed to his eye patch. Ask me how I know. Which is why she's got Mikan and me, Nekomaru boasted. We've already got a full workout regimen for her and everything. You should have seen her when she first got here. Couldn't even sit up on her own or anything. Now look at her. Is it really that simple? Peko wondered. Chiaki laughed. The noise caught everyone's attention as it turned from sounds of joy to tears. Chiaki! Everyone once more called out, but she waved them away. I'm so lucky, Chiaki smiled to them. The only one in the room that the smile didn't assure was Izuru Kamakura. Chapter 3. Hope radiated on Jabberwock Island in the days that followed. Everyone kept finding new ways to make the island accessible for their friend. It kept them busy. It kept their hearts full that Chiaki Nanami, once dead, was alive again thanks to Izuru. Chiaki's paralysis wasn't going to stop anyone now. We're surrounded by water, Kazuichi realized one afternoon. Yes, and? Fuyuhiko questioned with a raised eyebrow. Well, Chiaki's got to learn how to swim again, came the sure reply, and I can help with that. How? Sonia then inquired. Just wait and see, Kazuichi told them, winking for good measure. Fuyuhiko rolled his eyes. This is going to be a long one. Teru had a similar quality of life changes in mind for Chiaki. There's no way that she's going to eat that hospital slop while I'm here, he declared. Tell me her rehab progress and I'll make it better with my meals alone. Doubtful, Nekomaru sniffed. But a good meal would help put the pep in her step again. Not that she's able to take any more, Sonia reminded them all, lowering her head in reverence. Right, Nekomaru nodded, but the point still stands. And so Teru's cooking was added to Chiaki's rehab plan. There was no expense to be spared with each dish he made her. Each meal perfectly complemented whatever workout Nekomaru had planned that day. Sometimes he even slipped in a dessert, as an after-workout treat, of course. Another sign of caring from her peers was about to happen for Chiaki. Kazuichi had finally finished his special machine. He had Chiaki and Mikan meet him at Hotel Mirai's swimming pool. The young man was practically bouncing on his toes as he introduced what looked like a chair attached to a connected, curved lamppost. Ta-da! Kazuichi happily presented. Oh, Mikan approved. This could work out well. What is it? Chiaki asked. Kazuichi puffed his chest up high. It's a pool lift, he explained. It's a neat little chair, perfectly Chiaki-sized, with a hydraulic arm that can lift her in and out of the pool. Swimming can help regain some of your upper body strength, Mikan then went on to explain. It'll take a bit of training to get used to. The lift will be the easiest part, Kazuichi joked. He then started to scratch the back of his neck. The only caveat is that I haven't tested it yet. Then let's try it, Chiaki suggested, shrugging. Kazuichi's eyes lit up with both joy and concern. Serious? He asked. Chiaki nodded. I'm not ready to be bedridden again, she admitted, so let's get some swimming practice in. All right, Kazuichi whooped. At the same time, Mikan let out an anxious, that went ignored. Chiaki herself offered a smile. She deserved that small break. It made her pleasantly worn out once she got back to her hospital room. Chiaki leaned back against the hospital bed and closed her eyes for all of a moment. The low hum of the air conditioner narrated the empty thoughts inside her head. It was so odd being alone at the moment. Every day it seemed like she had some sort of visitor in her peers. She would never be alone for long. Usually a silence like this would have unnerved her, but now? Chiaki must have gone to sleep because the next thing she knew, the door to the hospital room was opening. Chiaki tilted her head to the side to see who it was. Her visitor made her smile. Hey, stranger, been a while since you've come around. She gave a spot on her bed a pat. Come sit, I'm so bored right now. Hajime lingered at the door. Even from where she was, Chiaki could see the rather blank expression on his face. It was like he didn't expect to find himself there. Then, like a death march, Hajime moved forward slowly. His expression was still and was doing its best not to break. It all went up in smoke the moment he was within arm's reach of Chiaki. There were tears in his eyes, and he'd be damned if he was going to wipe any of them away. His legs gave out just as he reached her bedside. If anyone had walked in, they would have thought he was praying over her. I'm so sorry, Hajime croaked out. I'm so sorry, Chiaki. Chiaki put on a small smile. She moved her hand to gently brush against his hair. I'm here now, she quietly said. Isn't that what matters the most? Hajime shook his head, more of a gesture to pull himself together than to disagree with her. He wiped away his tears before looking up at her. She still had that smile. It was like nothing had changed. But everything had, and Chiaki could feel it. What happened while I was gone? A jolt went through Hajime. He could feel it percolate against his mind in two different directions. You mean no one's told you about the tragedy yet? He asked. Chiaki shook her head. Never heard of it. Hajime looked away. Consider yourself the luckiest person on earth then. That bad? Chiaki wondered, raising her eyebrow. The expression on Hajime's face became darker. You have no idea. After hearing it all, the only reaction Chiaki could give was a breathless, yikes. Hajime absently nodded. The world we knew while at Hope's Peak is gone, he said. his voice not quite his own. In its place is something new, perhaps something terrifying. We'll have to see. Chiaki leaned back in her hospital bed and sighed. So that's why everyone's changed, she mused. She looked over at Hajime. You've changed too, she then said, bringing her hand up to touch his cheek. Hajime helped her by taking careful hold of her wrist. He even absently leaned into the gesture. He looked at her with his dual-colored eyes, making Chiaki bite her lip slightly. She eventually brought her hand back to her side, some resistance from Hajime aside, and decided to sit up a bit more. Tell me, and be honest, she then said. Are you Hajime or that other person? The one who came after Junko killed me. Izuru Kamakura. Yeah, him. Hajime looked down, unsure of how to answer at first. I'm both, he decided to say. But it's complicated. Sometimes I feel more like Hajime, and other times I feel more like Izuru. We share thoughts, but not feelings. It's like there's two different people in one head, and it gets confusing? Yeah. Silence fell in between the two of them then. Hajime broke it with another, I'm sorry. Don't be, Chiaki told him with a shake of her head. But I brought me back. Because you didn't need a reason, you just did it. But, Hajime, shut up. Hajime immediately recoiled, his mouth perfectly pursing together and waiting for permission to talk again. Seeing it work so quickly made Chiaki snort. Let's just relax for a bit, she then suggested. Just you and me, like we used to, okay? Hajime nodded. Okay, he agreed. Chiaki smiled. Hajime smiled back. And then, for a moment, they found peace in each other's presence once again. Chapter 4. A little to your left. No, your other left. Mikan! Mikan, watch out! A shriek and a crash. Mikan fell off the ladder into the floor. Everything came down with her. Mikan whined as everyone that went to her side found her in a compromising position. Today was the day of Chiaki's hospital discharge. In honor of such an occasion, former Class 77B were holding a party. Everyone had gotten involved in one way or another, from the decorations to the food to even distracting and helping Chiaki herself. There were no slouches to be had for the celebration. She's coming! Everyone get in the place! Several curse words were uttered by various peers as they quickly scrambled with the last of their preparations. The lights were almost kept on until someone remembered at last second. Working a wheelchair on her own was the least challenging thing Chiaki had gone through these past few days. Taking the ride alone had been her own choice. Independence was as simple as leaving the hospital. A part of her just couldn't wait until she could get up on her own and just go around the island on her new wheelchair. Kazuichi had promised he'd make her a scooter, but that wasn't much of a priority for her right now. Being out, getting fresh air, that was what felt most important. Suffice to say, having her friends all crowded around her cottage came as a genuine shock. Streamers and confetti decorated the modest abode. At the door was even a banner that read out, "Welcome home, Chiaki," in pastel pink lettering. "Surprise!" her friends all declared at once. Chiaki moved closer. She wondered what the inside of the cottage looked like if the outside looked like this. "You guys didn't have to do this," she soon said to them all. "Of course we had to. Anything for our class rep," Hibuki cheered. Chiaki let out a small laugh. "We're not at Ope's Peak anymore," she pointed out. "I'm not a class rep now." "Doesn't matter," Nekomaru thundered. "Once a class rep, always a class rep." Chiaki started blushing now. "You guys are sweet," she said. "And you haven't even seen the inside yet," the ultimate imposter chuckled. "The inside?" Everyone nodded, moving aside so Chiaki could enter. Once safely inside, the lights were flipped on and Chiaki got to see the inside of her cottage for the first time. The basic interior was about as you'd expect. 4 windows, 2 on the right and left, allowed natural light to flow in. A 4-poster bed with pastel pink curtains hanging down, and a private bathroom at the lower left corner for when Chiaki just needed a quick rinse. It was the added details that truly made it the room for the former Ultimate High School level gamer. Lining one wall was a shelf filled with every console in existence. Next to it was a large flat-screen TV. A bookcase on the other side of the TV held numerous video games of all types of genres and eras. On the opposite end of the room, there was a gaming computer set up with 2 monitors and a PC stand that glowed in certain areas. Seeing it all overwhelmed Chiaki with emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Guys," she choked out, "this is..." "No more mushy shit," Hiyoko interrupted. "We're here to party and it's time we get to it." "Yeah!" the others cheered. Chiaki smiled, a tear of joy running down her face for all of a moment. With that, former Class 77B partied well into the night. Everyone got a hand at playing a game from Chiaki's new setup. The only one who didn't seem to go near the games was Chiaki herself, but she would go on to claim that it was because she was having more fun watching her friends get along. She wasn't the only one who seemed a bit absent at the party. Hajime held back by the doors, simply staring at the others as they had the time of their lives. Izuru could accurately know who was going to win which game and when. Interacting while they were all so busy felt needless. Even after all this time, he was just as much a nobody as ever. That is, until Chiaki noticed that he hadn't joined the festivities. She moved over to him, making it look like a coincidence, and hummed as she stayed next to him. "I know you told me about the tragedy and what her friends did during," Chiaki said, hoping to make some form of conversation going. "But it's moments like this that make it easy to forget that. It's so strange. We're still kids still, you know? We're still leveling up in an RPG where we choose who we'll be. Our time at Hope's Peak may be over, but I think that's a good thing." "It doesn't scare you?" Izuru wondered with a raise of his eyebrow. "Not just Hope's Peak is gone now." Chiaki shook her head. "Nothing scares me when we're all together like this," she admitted. "The energy we all share, that's hope. I wish this was the side of them that everyone else in the world got to see. What they got to remember." "Yeah," Hajime sighed. Both him and Chiaki looked toward their friends once more. The others were having such a blast that they didn't even seem to notice the other two. But that was all right. They had each other after all. Hours passed and the party soon came to a close. Fubuki was the last to leave, having loudly provided the party soundtrack for most of the night when she wasn't gaming. The silence that came after was fast and nearly deafening. It was a different kind of silence that used to fall in the hospital. Here there were crickets, and even the faint chatter of her friends from outside as they went to their own cottages for the night. Chiaki moved her wheelchair close to her bed and started to navigate out the way Mikon had taught her. She scooted from the wheelchair to the bed with practiced ease. After that, it was just a matter of getting her legs in the right position again. Chiaki rested her head against her pillows, closed her eyes, and sighed. "I'm home." Chapter 5. Hajime did not know when he became the one to bring Chiaki to her rehab sessions, but here he was. He knocked on her door with care, waiting for a moment before finally going in. It took him a moment to realize that Chiaki was still a lump laying on her bed. That was not usual. "Hey Chiaki, how's it going?" Hajime asked, just so she knew he was there. "I hurt, Hajime. I very much hurt," Chiaki informed him, not moving very far from where she was, just moving the blanket away from her face so he knew that she was awake. "Well, it's a good thing you're going to therapy," Hajime lightly joked as he moved to her bedside. But Chiaki shook her head. "Not today. I can't even move." This also wasn't normal for Chiaki. She never put up resistance before when it was time to go. Could she really not move? "At least try," Hajime offered, carefully uncovering some of the blankets off of her to make it easy. Chiaki's upper body shivered from the shift in temperature. She looked up at Hajime with sad, pained eyes. "You can't make me get up," she warned him. "But you have to," he reminded her. "Nekomaru is waiting for us." Chiaki shook her head. She wasn't going to move. Either voluntarily or genuinely was something Hajime was about to find out. "Come on," he coaxed, getting close enough to put a hand behind her back. "I know you can do it. You just need to try and..." "No! Leave me alone!" Chiaki suddenly shouted. She used her whole weight to force Hajime's hand off her back, even attempting to bite it as it crossed her face. Hajime had to jump back in surprise. Izuru wasn't. Chiaki reached for her blankets, trying to use them to cover up again, but found that she couldn't quite reach without moving her legs. She let out a frustrated shout before covering her head with her pillow instead. After that display, Chiaki started to cry. Hajime didn't know what to do. His hand moved upward in order to stroke her head, but instead it hovered just inches away in conflict. There they stayed as Chiaki let out her physical pain and tears. Slowly, Chiaki's crying became small hiccups as she calmed herself down again. No matter how much pain she was in, she could still try to hold it together. It was just Hajime with her. That wasn't so bad. But what if someone was outside the door? You said both Hajime and Izuru exist in your body, right? Chiaki quietly mused. Well, I want to talk to Hajime. That's not how... Please? The request was far too innocent to ignore, never minding the fact that Chiaki was crying her eyes out not moments before. Whatever she needed to feel at ease again, they were willing to do it, for her. Hajime reached over and placed his hand over hers. I'm here, he promised. Chiaki's whole body relaxed. She removed the pillow from her head, looking at him with red, tired eyes. I'm scared. Hajime's hand held hers tighter. He didn't speak, though. He knew that Chiaki had to simply let it out. I'm trying so hard for everyone, and I don't know if I can, she admitted. I'm in so much pain every time we do a workout. Swimming isn't so bad. If anything, I think I prefer it more. But all those other exercises Nekomaru has me do, they make me want to die. They made me wish I did die, just so I didn't have to do them. So I could have feeling in my legs again, you know? It's terrible, but... She trailed off, not sure where else to go with the line of thought. Hajime did not move. Both parts of him agreed that doing so was not what she needed right now. Chiaki looked at Hajime, her gaze in particular falling upon his singular red eye. In honesty, it sent a shiver down her spine. She could remember that eye staring down at her when Junko killed her. He wasn't going to offer mercy at the time. She wasn't even sure if he knew what mercy was at that moment. Why did he save me? Do you really want to know? Chiaki went silent as she truly considered it. Yes, she decided. I want to know why Izuru saved me then. It was in that moment that finally made Hajime move his hand away from Chiaki's. He stepped a bit away from her bed, an act that definitely caught Chiaki's attention. It wasn't Izuru who saved you. He set up the Lazarus container, but he didn't make the choice. It wasn't? Izuru shook his head. Hajime Hinata was lost. He didn't exist in the same body as Izuru at the time, and yet... He wanted to save me. Yes, he did. Chiaki looked down, processing the information. When she looked back up, she was smiling. Thank you. Hajime could not hide the blush that followed. I'm still not getting up, though, Chiaki then said, her smile still persistent and somewhat joking. Hajime let out a snort. I think you deserve not to, he said. In fact, I'll be back. Chiaki raised an eyebrow. Hajime gave her a smile before leaving her room. He came back not long after with a bag in his hands. Chiaki winced as she forced herself to sit up, curious about what could have been in the bag. That was enough progress in the morning that he should have pressed her to try therapy again, but Hajime was already on a different mission now. He sat next to Chiaki on her bed before digging through the bag. After a moment or two, he pulled out a familiar pink handheld console. How's your trigger finger? He cheekily asked. Chiaki's whole face lit up. All pain was temporarily forgotten as she reached for the console. Hajime handed it over without any issue. It was seconds between Chiaki receiving the console, turning it on, and letting everything boot up before starting a new game. The sounds of clicking directional buttons filled the room as Chiaki entered her element after so long. Hajime watched on with pride on his face. This was another reaction that Izuru knew would happen. You can take a person away from their talent, but the talent never leaves the person. Chiaki only beat 10 levels before putting the console down. It shocked Hajime that she even pushed it away from her, allowing the game to go into a fail state instead of putting it on pause. Less of a shock was her laying back down on her bed again. Chronic pain was chronic for a reason. Chiaki tried to find a good spot to relax in before closing her eyes. Hajime, Thank you, she said with a light sigh, for everything. Hajime tilted his head. Everything? He asked. In Izru's cadence, he added, You mentioned that you still won the die. Has that changed? Chiaki nodded. Maybe I still do, but I know I've got you and the others. I'm not alone. She shot him a genuine smile. We just got to remind Nekomaru that I'm not coming today. Yeah, Hajime snorted. We should probably do that before he gets worried. With that, the two friends laughed.